Leladice and gentleman, when life feels unfair, it's easy to point the finger outward. We blame the boss who doesn't see our talent, the friend who let us down, the partner who doesn't understand us, or the world that simply refuses to cooperate. And in that moment, it feels comforting. After all, if it's someone else's fault, then we're safe from blame. We don't need to change. We don't need to reflect. We don't need to grow. But here's the truth most people never want to hear. If it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing. If it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing. This truth is one of the hardest yet most liberating lessons you will ever learn in your life, because human nature has a deep tendency to avoid discomfort, and taking responsibility is uncomfortable. It shines a bright light on our own flaws, our own blind spots, our own choices that perhaps weren't as wise as we would like to believe. Yet without facing those truths, growth becomes impossible. People fall into the easy habit of pointing the finger outward, saying it was the teacher's fault, the boss's fault, the parent's fault, the friend's fault, the system's fault. And in the short term, that blame feels like relief. It gives a sense of escape. It shields the ego from pain. But over time it becomes a prison, because it convinces you that you are powerless. And when you are powerless, you stop trying, you stop adapting, you stop evolving, and you trade away the very freedom that responsibility gives you, because responsibility is not a burden, it is a gift, is the proof that you have agency, that you have the ability to respond differently, to choose better, to grow wiser, and to create new outcomes. But the moment you hand that over to someone else by blaming them for everything, you hand over the keys to your future as well. This is why powerful communication, smart communication, and truly transformative self-talk all begin with this first principle. Own your part in every situation, no matter how small, because that ownership is where growth takes root. Think about how easy it is to say, "My boss doesn't recognize me," instead of asking, "Have I clearly shown the value I bring?" Or how quick we are to say, "My friend betrayed me," instead of asking, "Did I set clear boundaries? I communicate my expectations, I ignore warning signs." Or how tempting it is to say, "Life isn't fair," instead of asking, "What can I do with the hand I was dealt?" And while it is true that unfair things happen, while it is true that people make mistakes that hurt us, while it is true that not every setback is of our own making, it is also true that every response belongs entirely to us. The quality of our life is shaped less by what happens to us and more by how we choose to respond. And that is where communication comes in. The words we use, both in our mind and aloud, are the very tools we use to build or destroy our growth, to build or destroy our relationships, build or destroy our future. When you constantly speak the language of blame, your brain begins to believe that story, and stories have incredible power, because the story you tell yourself is the script you live out every day. And if your script is one where you are always the victim of someone else's actions, then your character in that story will never be the hero. But if you change the script and speak to yourself with responsibility, with ownership, with power, suddenly you are no longer a passive character. You are the author, and as the author you get to decide how the story unfolds from this chapter forward. And this is why positive self-talk is not about sugarcoating reality. It is not about pretending pain doesn't exist. It is not about ignoring the wrongs others may have done. It is about choosing a mindset that focuses on your control, your growth, your ability to learn, and your ability to rise. Consider two people who lose their jobs on the same day. One spends months saying, "The company treated me unfairly, my manager had it out for me, the economy is terrible, and there's nothing I can do." While the other says, "That was painful, I didn't deserve to be let go, but I can use this as a chance to sharpen my skills, expand my network, prepare for the next opportunity." And over time, which person grows? Which person communicates strength? Which person attracts respect? Which person creates new doors? It will always be the one who chose ownership, because blame builds walls, but responsibility builds doors. Doors lead to growth. Now think about communication in your daily life. How do you sound when you blame? The sentences are sharp, defensive, full of accusation. "You never listen, you always ignore me. It's your fault this happened." And how do you sound when you own your role? The sentences are calmer, more open, more constructive. "I felt overlooked in that moment. I need to communicate better what matters to me. Here's what I'd like to try differently." And just notice how different those two approaches feel. One pushes people away, one pulls people closer. One starts a fight, one starts a dialogue, one keeps you stuck, and one moves you forward. And that difference doesn't come from the situation itself, comes from the mindset you bring, the choice to blame or the choice to own. When you begin to train yourself to speak in ways that reflect ownership, your entire presence shifts, because people can feel it when you are someone who takes responsibility. They trust you more, they respect you more, they are drawn to you more, because responsibility is rare in a world addicted to blame, and that rarity makes you stand out. And not only does it improve your communication with others, but it improves the communication you have with yourself, because every time you choose ownership, you are reinforcing to your own mind that you are capable, that you are adaptable, that you are powerful. This builds a loop of growth that continues to expand outward. Growth is never comfortable, and ownership is never easy. But easy and comfortable have never built greatness. And if you want to master the psychology of powerful communication, if you want to speak smart and live smart, you must start here, with the mirror instead of the shield. Question: what can I learn? Instead of, who can I blame? Because every great communicator, every great leader, great voice that has shaped history, all had one thing in common. They took responsibility for their words, their actions, and their growth. And they refused to give that power away by blaming others. And if you choose to do the same, then this chapter will not just be words on a page or sounds in your ear. It will be the turning point where you stop outsourcing your growth and start claiming it. Where you stop waiting for others to change and start transforming yourself. Where you stop pointing outward and start looking inward. Because the moment you do that, you step into the role of author, not victim. That is the first and most important step in speaking smart and mastering the psychology of powerful communication. The words you speak to yourself are not just passing thoughts. They are the architecture of your reality, the invisible scaffolding that shapes the way you walk into every room, the way you handle every challenge, give them your full attention, and the way you connect with every person you meet. Because before you open your mouth to speak to the world, you have already been speaking to yourself, and that inner dialogue sets the tone for everything that follows. And yet most people are completely unaware of how toxic, unkind, self-sabotaging their inner conversations truly are. Repeating phrases like, "I'm not good enough, I always mess up, nobody listens to me, I'll never succeed." And when those words are repeated often enough, they hardwire into the brain, becoming beliefs, and those beliefs spill outward into every conversation, every relationship, and every opportunity, which is why mastering communication does not begin with fancy techniques or clever phrasing. It begins with mastering the way you talk to yourself. Positive self-talk is not about lying to yourself. It's not about standing in front of a mirror, chanting empty affirmations you don't believe. It's not about pretending that life is always perfect, because such false positivity collapses the moment it meets real struggle. Instead, positive self-talk is about choosing words that empower instead of weaken, words that remind you of your agency instead of your helplessness, words that open doors in your mind instead of slamming them shut. And this choice, repeated day after day, creates a new mental environment where growth is not only possible but natural. Consider how differently two people might approach the same setback. One says, "I knew this would happen. I never get things right. This always happens to me, so what's the point in trying again?" While the other says, "This hurts. I didn't expect this setback, but I can figure out what went wrong. I can learn from it. I can try again." And though both felt the same pain, the second person will rise while the first will sink, and the only difference lies in the words they chose to tell themselves. Those inner sentences are powerful because the brain believes what it hears repeatedly, even if it comes from you, especially if it comes from you. If you feed your brain doubt and limitation, it will filter the world through that doubt. But if you feed it resilience and possibility, will begin to see opportunities even in obstacles. This is why athletes visualize success before competing, why leaders rehearse speeches not only for delivery but for belief, why therapists teach clients to challenge negative self-talk, because self-talk is the steering wheel of your mind, and where it points, your life follows. Think about communication with others for a moment. You walk into a meeting thinking, "Nobody cares what I have to say. I'll probably stumble over my words. They'll think I'm not smart." How will you sound? Hesitant, small, apologetic, maybe even defensive, and your audience will sense that insecurity before you finish your first sentence. But if you walk into the same room thinking, "I have prepared well, I bring value, I don't need to be perfect, I just need to be clear," suddenly your tone is steadier, your words are stronger, your body language aligns with your message, and people lean in to listen, because the confidence you feel inside is communicated outside without you even trying. The connection here is clear. Communication with others mirrors communication with yourself, and if you want to speak smart, persuasive, and powerful words, you must first build smart, persuasive, and powerful words in your own mind. This doesn't mean ignoring flaws or pretending you have nothing to improve. It means framing those flaws in ways that promote growth instead of paralysis. So instead of saying, "I'm terrible at this," you say, "I'm still learning this." Instead of saying, "I always fail," you say, "I haven't succeeded yet, but I can adapt." Instead of saying, "I'm not confident enough," you say, "I'm practicing confidence. Every attempt makes me stronger." And these small shifts may sound like semantics, but they are far more than that. They are psychological reprogramming. They are the daily rewiring of your mind towards strength. And over time, they change not just what you say but who you become. Your words to yourself are like seeds. If you plant doubt, you harvest limitation. If you plant courage, you harvest growth. And the harvest is what you eventually share with others. Because when you stand in front of someone, your self-talk has already spoken first. It has already shaped your energy, your presence, your body language, your tone, and even the kinds of words you choose, and people feel it, even if they cannot name it. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and instantly command attention, even before they say a word? It's not magic, your full attention. It's not charisma they were simply born with. It is the echo of the words they have been telling themselves for years. The quiet but steady confidence built on constructive self-talk that has become their natural state. And you can build the same presence if you are willing to transform your inner voice. Imagine for a moment your inner dialogue as a coach standing on the sidelines of your life. Would you win many games if your coach shouted insults, told you you were doomed, mocked your every move, and reminded you of every past mistake? No, you'd collapse before the game even began, your full attention. But what if your coach said, "You've trained for this, mistakes will happen, but you can recover, keep going, you're capable of more than you think"? Suddenly, even in the toughest game, you fight harder, you believe deeper, you persist longer. That is exactly what happens when you shift your self-talk from destructive to empowering. This is not about being unrealistically cheerful. It is about being constructively truthful, and constructive truth is the foundation of positive self-talk, because it acknowledges the challenge, but emphasizes the possibility. It faces the difficulty, but reminds you of your strength. It admits the fear, but highlights the courage that can move forward anyway. To practice this daily, start noticing the words you use when you talk to yourself. Because awareness is the first step to change. Most people let their inner critic speak unchecked, unaware of how cruel and limiting it is. But when you catch it, you can challenge it, you can replace it, you can say, "That's not the story I choose anymore." And over time, your new words will become your new default. Communication psychology has proven again and again that language shapes thought, and thought shapes behavior. So if you want to change your life, begin your full by changing the conversation happening inside your head, because that conversation is the seed of every external one. The voice you feed inside will become the voice others hear outside. And when your inner voice is strong, resilient, respectful, and wise, your outer communication will be the same. This is the essence of positive self-talk, not denial of reality, but the choice to shape reality with empowering words. And once you master that, you will find that your voice, both internal and external, begins to carry a new power, a new clarity, and a new ability to connect and inspire. Every word you speak is colored by the emotions you feel in the moment, and whether you realize it or not, your emotions are the invisible filter that shapes not only what you say, but how you say it, how it is received, and how it lingers in the memory of the people around you. Because you cannot separate communication from emotion, they are inseparable threads in the same fabric, and the challenge is that most people are unaware of this connection. They let their emotions hijack their words. They let anger spit venom before thought can catch it. They let fear choke their voice until it shrinks to a whisper. They let insecurity disguise itself as sarcasm or defensiveness. Then they wonder why conversations break down, why relationships feel tense, and why influence slips through their fingers. But here is the truth. To master communication, you must first master your emotions, and that does not mean suppressing them or pretending you do not feel them. Suppression is a ticking time bomb. Silence only builds pressure until it explodes. No, emotional mastery means awareness. It means recognizing what you feel before it drives your words. It means pausing long enough to choose a response rather than reacting blindly. It means becoming the calm in the storm instead of being tossed by it. And this is what separates powerful communicators from ordinary ones. In moments of high emotion, whether conflict, excitement, or stress, most people lose control, but those who can steady their emotions can steady their words, and steady words are the foundation of clarity, influence, and respect. Think about the last time you were angry. Did you speak with patience, precision, and wisdom, or did you fire off words you later wished you could swallow back? Anger in itself is not the enemy, but unmanaged anger destroys trust, turns words into weapons instead of bridges, while managed anger, anger that is noticed, acknowledged, and channeled, can be fuel for truth spoken with firmness and strength, but without cruelty. This is the difference between emotional reactivity and emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, simple but difficult act of naming your feeling in the moment. I am angry, I am afraid, I am disappointed, I am excited. Because when you name an emotion, you create space between you and it. You are no longer swimming blindly inside it, you are observing it, and observation gives you choice, and choice gives you freedom, and freedom gives you power over your communication. Imagine two leaders delivering the same bad news. The first is tense, defensive, and agitated, snapping at questions and radiating stress. The second is calm, measured, and compassionate, speaking clearly and allowing space for others to react. Which one will their team trust? Which one will people follow? Which one communicates strength? Always the one who managed emotion, not the one who let emotion manage them. This applies not only to leadership, but to every human interaction. Parents raising children, partners resolving conflict, friends supporting each other, colleagues collaborating under pressure. Because in every case, emotion leaks into tone, body language, pacing, and word choice, and even when you say the right words, if your emotional state contradicts them, people will believe the emotion over the words. You can say, "I'm fine," through clenched teeth, and people will know you are not fine. Say, "I understand," with rolling eyes, and people will know you do not understand, because communication is not just verbal, it is emotional. The emotional current is always stronger than the literal text, which is why mastery of emotion is essential. To develop this mastery, practice the pause, because a pause is your greatest ally in communication. A pause lets you breathe. A pause lets you check in with what you feel. A pause lets you choose words that match your intention instead of spilling words that match your impulse. And while it may feel unnatural at first, while silence may feel heavy, it is in that silence that wisdom has room to form. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Another tool is perspective. When emotion rises, ask yourself, how will I feel about this tomorrow, or a year from now, 10 years from now? Because perspective shrinks the intensity of emotions that feel overwhelming in the present. This allows you to communicate with balance rather than volatility. And let us not forget empathy. Managing your own emotions is only half the equation. The other half is reading and responding to the emotions of others. Powerful communication is never one-sided. It is a dance, and to dance well you must sense the rhythm of the other, which means noticing when someone is tense, when someone is hurt, when someone is afraid, and adjusting your words to meet them where they are instead of bulldozing them with logic while ignoring their feelings. Because feelings are not obstacles to communication, they are the gateway to it. When you validate someone's feelings, if you do not agree with their perspective, you create safety, and in safety, people open up. And when they open up, communication becomes deeper and more effective. This is where emotional intelligence becomes not just a tool for managing yourself, but a superpower for connecting with others. Remember that emotions are contagious too. Your calm can calm others, your joy can inspire others, your panic can spread panic, your anger can ignite anger. So the emotional state you bring into a room is not just personal, it is influential. It shapes the collective atmosphere. Give them your full attention, and the communicator who understands this can shift the energy of an entire group simply by mastering their own state. Think of the teacher who steadies a classroom with quiet authority instead of yelling, the mediator who calms a heated dispute with a gentle but firm tone, the friend who comforts with presence more than words. All of them demonstrate that communication power is emotional power. And yet, mastering emotion is not about perfection. You will still feel anger, fear, sadness, excitement, frustration. But the goal is not to erase these emotions. The goal is to integrate them, to use them wisely, to let them inform your words without controlling them, to turn them into signals instead of shackles, because emotions are data. They reveal what matters to you. They point to your values, your needs, your boundaries, and when you understand them, you can communicate them more clearly. I am upset because this matters to me. I am nervous because I care about the outcome. I am passionate because this aligns with my values. And in this way, emotion becomes fuel for clarity instead of fog for confusion. Ultimately, the communicator who grows in emotional mastery grows in influence, because people do not only listen to the words you say, they listen to the state you bring, and when your state is steady, grounded, aware, and intentional, your words carry weight, your presence carries calm, and your message cuts through noise. This is the psychology of powerful communication. Emotions will always be present, but mastery means you carry them, not carry you, and when you practice this daily, pausing, naming, reframing, empathizing, you build the muscle of emotional intelligence. With that muscle, you gain the power to speak not just smart but wise, not just clearly but deeply, not just loudly but meaningfully. That is how emotions, once seen as obstacles to communication, become the very foundation of communication that transforms. Listening is one of the most underestimated yet most powerful skills in human communication. While everyone thinks they know how to listen, the reality is that most people do not listen at all. They wait, they prepare their reply. They nod politely while their mind races ahead to what they want to say. But true listening is different. True listening is presence, and presence is power, because when you really listen, you give someone the rare gift of your full attention. And in today's noisy, distracted world, that gift is priceless. It is magnetic. It is healing. It is the foundation of trust. And if you want to master the psychology of powerful communication, you must first master the art of listening. Imagine a conversation where one person is speaking about something important, pouring out their thoughts, their fears, their excitement, their pain, and the other person interrupts, glances at their phone, finishes sentences for them, or rushes to give advice before even understanding what is being said. What does that communicate? It communicates that the speaker's words do not matter, that the listener's ego is more important, that presence is absent, and when people feel unheard, they shut down, they withdraw, they stop sharing, and the relationship weakens. Now imagine the opposite. Someone leans in, maintains eye contact, stays silent long enough for you to finish, asks clarifying questions, and reflects back what they heard to make sure they understood. Suddenly you feel valued, understood, respected, and safe, and in that safety, you open up more, you share more, you connect more deeply, And this is why listening is not passive, it is active, it is deliberate, the foundation upon which influence is built. People often think great communicators are great talkers, but the truth is that the best communicators are great listeners, because listening gives you the information you need to speak wisely. It reveals the emotions beneath the words. It uncovers the needs behind the conflict. It shows you where to aim your response. And without it, you are shooting blind. Listening also changes the way people see you. When you listen, you are not only gathering information, are also shaping identity. People walk away from conversations not remembering every word that was said, but remembering how they felt in your presence. And when they feel heard, they remember you as someone who cares, someone who respects, someone who values them. And that memory becomes the seed of trust. Consider the difference in a workplace. A manager who listens deeply to their team learns what motivates them, what frustrates them, what ideas they have, and that listening builds loyalty, while a manager who dismisses or interrupts erodes trust until employees feel clarity is more powerful than complexity. And if you want to speak smart and communicate with lasting influence, your full attention, you must learn that the strength of your words is not measured by how complicated they sound, but by how easily they can be understood, because true intelligence is not about impressing others with jargon or overwhelming them with details. True intelligence is the ability to take something complex and express it so simply that anyone can grasp it. Yet so many people fall into the trap of dressing up their speech with long words, technical phrases, and endless explanations, believing that this makes them appear more professional or more intelligent, but in reality, it creates distance, confusion, and often mistrust. Your full attention, because people cannot connect with what they do not understand, and if your message cannot be understood, it cannot be remembered, it cannot create change. Think about the most powerful speeches and messages in history, the ones that moved nations, inspired revolutions, or comforted people in times of despair. Almost all of them were built on simple, clear, direct language, words that cut straight to the heart, words that a child could understand, words that bypassed intellectual clutter and landed directly in the human spirit, because clarity resonates while complexity distracts. Consider the difference between a doctor who explains your condition in plain words you can follow versus one who buries you in medical jargon, who makes you feel safer, makes you trust them more, who makes you feel equipped to act. The answer is always the one who communicates clearly, because clarity creates trust, clarity reduces fear, clarity builds confidence, and clarity empowers action. And this is why the best leaders, teachers, communicators take time to strip away the unnecessary until only the essential remains. But clarity is not only about words. It is also about intention, because many times people speak unclearly, not because the words are complicated, but because they themselves are unclear about what they want to express. If they've your full attention, they have not thought through their purpose, their message, or their outcome, so they ramble, they circle, they stuff their sentences with filler, and they leave the listener lost. And this is why one of the most powerful habits you can build is to ask yourself before speaking, what is the core message I want to deliver? What do I want this person to know, feel, or do by the time I finish speaking? And once you have that answer, strip your message down to that core, then build around it with only what is necessary to illuminate it, not bury it. Communication is like light. The more scattered it is, the weaker it feels, but when focused, it has the power to cut through even the thickest darkness. Your full attention, And your job as a communicator is to focus the light of your words so it shines directly into the mind and heart of your listener. Think about how often arguments spiral because people throw too many words at each other, repeating the same point in different ways, adding accusation after accusation, drowning the real issue in noise, when in reality, a single clear statement like, "I feel hurt when this happens, and I need us to find a solution," would carry more power than 10 minutes of angry rambling. Clarity shortens distance, clarity reduces confusion, and clarity invites resolution. And clarity does not mean being cold or mechanical. It means being precise. It means cutting away the unnecessary so the necessary can breathe. It means saying just enough to carry your meaning, but never so much that your meaning gets lost. The irony is that many people believe clarity makes them sound less impressive, when in fact it makes them sound more powerful. Clear words travel farther, stick longer, and echo louder, while complex words fall flat after the moment. Consider advertising. The most famous slogans are never long or complicated. They are short, sharp, and clear, often just a few words, yet they stay in your memory for years. They spread from person to person. They influence decisions on a massive scale, all because clarity beats cleverness every time. How do you practice clarity in your own communication? Start by simplifying your vocabulary, not dumbing it down, translating ideas into everyday language that anyone can follow. Because if you cannot explain your idea simply, it may mean you do not yet fully understand it yourself, and by forcing yourself to make it clear, you sharpen your own understanding too. Next, practice structuring your messages. Begin with the main point, then provide context, then close with what you want the other person to do or remember. Clarity is not just about words but about structure, and structure creates flow, and flow creates comprehension. Also embrace brevity, because more words rarely mean more meaning. Often they mean less. The more you add, the more you dilute, so discipline yourself to remove the filler, the tangents, the unnecessary details, and keep only what strengthens the message, because every extra word competes for the listener's attention, and attention is the most precious resource in communication. Finally, align your nonverbal communication with your words. Clarity is not only spoken, it is in your tone, your pace, your gestures, your eye contact, and if your body contradicts your words, the message will not be clear, so let your whole presence communicate the same thing. The great paradox is that clarity requires courage, because simple words leave you exposed. There is nowhere to hide. But in that exposure lies power, because people trust the communicator who says exactly what they mean, with no disguise, no jargon, no fog. If you practice this daily, whether in casual conversations, professional settings, or personal relationships, you will notice that people listen longer, remember more, and respect your words more, because clarity is not only kind, powerful, and when your words are clear, your influence multiplies. In the end, speaking smart is not about sounding complicated. It is about being understood. It is about cutting through noise. It is about letting your words carry the weight of truth without being weighed down by clutter. And once you commit to clarity, you will find that your voice not only becomes easier to hear, but impossible to ignore. Confidence in communication is not about speaking the loudest, dominating the room, or forcing people to agree with you. True confidence is quieter, steadier, and far more magnetic, because it comes from a place of inner certainty rather than outer performance. And when you learn to build authentic confidence in the way you speak, you stop chasing approval and start commanding respect naturally. The first truth you must understand is that confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you build, something you practice, something that grows with every experience where you choose courage over fear. And this means that no matter how nervous, shy, or insecure you feel right now, you have the ability to grow into a confident communicator if you are willing to train your mindset and your habits. Many people think confidence means never feeling nervous, but that is a myth, because even the best speakers in the world feel nerves before they step on stage. Even the most seasoned leaders feel a rush of doubt before a big meeting. But the difference is that they do not let those nerves control them. They transform that nervous energy into focus, into presence, into power. And this shift is available to you too, if you understand the psychology behind it. Confidence begins with preparation, because when you know your material, when you have rehearsed your message, when you have clarified your point, you naturally reduce uncertainty, and uncertainty is what feeds fear. So preparation is not just about knowing your facts. It is about calming your mind so you can show up present instead of panicked. And the more you prepare, the freer you are to adapt in the moment, because you have a solid foundation beneath you. But preparation alone is not enough, because confidence is also shaped by the stories you tell yourself about who you are. And if your inner dialogue is filled with self-criticism, doubt, or fear of judgment, then no matter how well prepared you are, your body will betray your insecurity. This is why positive self-talk is not a luxury but a necessity, because your words to yourself become the script your mind follows, and your mind shapes your body, your tone, your energy, your entire presence. So instead of telling yourself, "I'm going to fail, I'm not good enough, will judge me," practice saying, "I am prepared, I am capable, my voice has value, I don't need to be perfect, I just need to be real." And this subtle shift in inner language creates a radical shift in outer presence. Another key to confidence is body language, because before you even open your mouth, people are already reading your posture, your facial expressions, your eye contact. If your body communicates insecurity, slouched shoulders, fidgeting hands, avoiding eye contact, then your words will carry less weight. If your body communicates groundedness, upright posture, steady breathing, calm gestures, open eye contact, then your words carry authority before they are even spoken. And the fascinating truth is that body language works in both directions. Not only does your body reflect your mind, but your body also trains your mind. So if you deliberately adopt confident posture and breathing, you begin to feel more confident inside. And this is why athletes warm up with power poses, why leaders practice standing tall, why breathing exercises are essential. They are tools for rewiring the mind through the body. But confidence also means embracing imperfection, because perfectionism kills presence, and the most powerful communicators are not the ones who never stumble or never pause, but the ones who are comfortable being human in front of others, who can laugh at themselves, who can make a mistake and keep going. Your full attention, who can admit they don't know everything but still hold the room with honesty, because people do not connect to perfection. They connect to authenticity. When you stop trying to be flawless, you free yourself to be fearless. Confidence also comes from focusing outward instead of inward, because insecurity thrives when your attention is trapped in self-consciousness. What do I look like? Do I sound nervous? Do they like me? But confidence grows when your attention is focused on the listener. What do they need? How can I serve? How can I make this clear? How can I leave them better than I found them? And this shift of focus dissolves fear, because it turns communication from a performance into a contribution, and contribution feels purposeful, while performance feels pressured. Practice is another crucial ingredient, because confidence is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it grows, and every conversation, every meeting, every chance to share your ideas is a training ground. So instead of waiting for the perfect moment to suddenly feel confident, create momentum by practicing daily. Speak up in small settings, challenge yourself to ask a question, share your opinion in a group, record yourself and listen back, and over time, what once felt terrifying becomes natural, because your nervous system adapts to what you repeatedly face. Confidence also grows from resilience, because no communicator, no matter how skilled, succeeds in every moment. Sometimes your ideas will be rejected. Sometimes your jokes will fall flat. Sometimes your words will miss the mark. But if you treat every setback as proof you are not good enough, you will shrink, while if you treat every setback as a stepping stone, as feedback, as fuel to improve, then your confidence expands, because you know failure cannot destroy you, it can only refine you, and that mindset makes you unstoppable. Surrounding yourself with supportive voices also matters, because confidence is contagious, and when you spend time with people who encourage you, who believe in your voice, who reflect back your strengths, you begin to see yourself through their eyes. But if you surround yourself with constant critics, begin to doubt yourself more, so choose wisely who you let influence your confidence. Finally, remember that confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance inflates the ego by putting others down, while confidence uplifts the self without needing to diminish anyone else. And people can feel the difference instantly, because arrogance repels, but confidence attracts. Arrogance makes people defensive, but confidence makes people receptive. And when you speak from grounded confidence, your words gain natural authority, your presence feels trustworthy, influence multiplies. So if you want to master powerful communication, stop waiting to feel confident and start building confidence through preparation, positive self-talk, body language, authenticity, outward focus, daily practice, resilience, supportive environments, and humility, because confidence is not a gift given to a chosen few. It is a skill available to anyone who is willing to do the work, and once you build it, you will find that your voice no longer trembles, your ideas no longer hide, and your presence no longer fades. You have stepped into the unshakable truth that your words matter, and your voice deserves to be heard. Emotional intelligence is the hidden engine behind powerful communication, because while many people think that speaking smart is only about the right words, the right tone, or the right structure, the truth is that what gives words their real impact is the emotional current flowing underneath them. This current is shaped by your ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, both your own and those of the people you are speaking with. And if you lack this ability, the most perfectly crafted message can fall flat, while with emotional intelligence, even a simple phrase can touch hearts, dissolve conflict, spark transformation, because people may forget what you say, but they never forget how you made them feel. At its core, emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, the ability to notice your own feelings in real time and understand how those feelings are influencing your words, your body language, and your decisions. So often people speak in anger or defensiveness without realizing that emotion has hijacked their communication, and the result is words that wound rather than words that build. But when you pause long enough to ask yourself, "What am I feeling right now?" Where is this coming from? How is it shaping the way I'm speaking? You create a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies the power to choose a wiser response, a response that communicates strength without aggression, honesty without cruelty, clarity without harshness. From self-awareness flows self-management, the ability to regulate your emotions so that they work for you rather than against you. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. It means channeling them constructively so that frustration becomes fuel for finding solutions instead of fuel for blame, so that nervousness becomes energy for presence rather than paralysis, so that excitement becomes contagious enthusiasm rather than overwhelming intensity. And when you can manage your emotions in this way, you remain steady even when conversations grow heated, you stay calm even when others lose control, and your steadiness becomes a source of strength that others naturally trust. But emotional intelligence does not stop with the self. It expands outward into empathy, the ability to sense and understand the emotions of others, to pick up on the subtle signals in tone, body language, facial expressions, and choice of words, to hear not just what is being said, but what is being felt beneath the words. This ability is what separates surface-level communicators from truly powerful ones, because when people feel you understand their emotions, they open up, trust you, they become more willing to listen in return, and influence grows from that trust. Empathy, however, not just about silently absorbing someone else's feelings. It is about responding in a way that validates their experience without losing your own voice, which might sound like saying, "I hear how frustrated you are, and I understand why this matters to you. Let's see how we can move forward." Rather than dismissing, ignoring, or arguing against what they feel, this simple act of acknowledgement can transform conflict into collaboration. The final dimension of emotional intelligence in communication is relationship management, which means using your awareness of emotions, both yours and others, to build stronger, healthier, more productive interactions, whether that means inspiring a team, navigating a disagreement, giving feedback without discouragement, or resolving tension in a way that leaves both parties respected. And this skill is the glue of human connection, because no matter how talented, skilled, or knowledgeable you are, without the ability to manage relationships, your influence will always be limited. Think about a leader who speaks with charisma, but explodes in anger when challenged, or a professional who is brilliant in ideas, but cold in relationships, or a parent who loves deeply, but cannot regulate their frustration. Each one's communication is undermined not by lack of knowledge or vocabulary, but by lack of emotional intelligence. And the reverse is also true. A leader with empathy can unite people across differences. A professional with self-control can earn trust even in high-stakes moments, and a parent with emotional awareness can teach resilience through example. This is why mastering emotional intelligence is not optional if you want to speak smart. It is essential. The good news is that emotional intelligence is not a fixed trait, it is a skill that can be developed. And it begins with simple daily practices. Key taking a moment each morning to check in with your emotions, journaling about your triggers and patterns. You're practicing deep breathing to regulate your state before difficult conversations, deliberately listening without interrupting, and asking questions that invite others to share not just their thoughts but their feelings. And though these may seem small, they compound into a greater awareness that transforms the way you show up in every interaction. Another practical exercise is perspective taking. Your attention, intentionally imagining what the other person might be feeling and why, because even if you cannot fully agree with their perspective, trying to see the world through their eyes softens your response, increases compassion, and makes your communication more effective. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And perhaps the most powerful shift you can make is to see every interaction not as a battle to win, but as an opportunity to connect. Because when your goal is connection, you listen differently, you speak differently, you show up differently, and people feel it. This feeling builds bonds that outlast any single conversation. In the end, emotional intelligence is what turns words into bridges rather than walls. It is what allows you to disagree without disrespect, to influence without manipulation, to inspire without forcing, and to comfort without pretending. And when you develop this skill, you no longer fear difficult conversations because you know you can navigate them with grace. You no longer feel powerless in conflict because you understand the forces at play, and you no longer settle for shallow interactions because you have learned how to speak to the heart as well as the mind. And this is the essence of speaking smart, not simply arranging words in clever order, but aligning your words with the deeper emotional truth of the moment, so that what you say not only informs but transforms. Storytelling is the secret weapon of powerful communication, because while facts inform the mind, stories move the heart, and if you want your words to be remembered, repeated, and acted upon, you must learn the art of weaving your message into a narrative that captures imagination, creates emotion, and connects people to meaning. Human beings are wired for stories. We have been telling them around fires, in temples, in courts, and in classrooms for thousands of years. And long before we wrote laws, textbooks, or manuals, we passed down wisdom through stories. And that is because stories do something facts cannot do. They make us feel. And when we feel, we remember. And when we remember, we act. The brain processes raw data in fragments. Numbers and statistics may be true, but they rarely stick. Yet when those same truths are placed inside a story with characters, conflict, and resolution, they light up multiple areas of the brain, engaging not only logic but emotion, vision, and memory. And this is why a single well-told story can accomplish more than hours of explanation. Think of the great leaders, activists, teachers, and innovators. They all knew the power of story, whether it was a parable told to teach a moral lesson, a personal struggle shared to inspire hope, or a vision of the future painted in vivid detail. Their words endure not because of the raw facts, but because of the emotional journey they carried people through. And this is the same tool you must master if you want to elevate your communication. But storytelling does not mean inventing fiction or being dramatic for its own sake. It means finding the human heartbeat inside every message, because even in the driest business presentation or the most technical report, there is a story waiting to be told. The story of a problem and a solution, the story of a struggle and a breakthrough, the story of people and their challenges. And when you uncover that story, you unlock attention. Every great story has three universal elements: a beginning that sets the stage, a middle that introduces conflict, and an end that brings resolution. This structure mirrors the way our minds naturally process experiences. We look for context, then we face tension, then we crave closure. If your communication follows this rhythm, people will stay engaged until the end. For example, instead of saying, "Our company increased sales by 20% last year," imagine saying, "Last year, our team faced one of the toughest markets we had ever seen. Competitors were stronger, customers were uncertain, and we were unsure if we could keep pace. But by coming together, trying new strategies, and refusing to quit, we didn't just survive, we grew, and we ended the year 20% higher than before. Now the same fact is embedded in a story. Suddenly, it is not just a number, it is a journey, and people lean in because they want to know how the story unfolds. Storytelling also creates empathy, because when you tell a story of your own struggle, mistake, or lesson learned, you invite others to see themselves in you. You break down the wall of perfection and connect through vulnerability. This is why the most compelling communicators are not the ones who boast of constant success, but the ones who share the messy middle, the failures, the doubts, the obstacles, because everyone knows what struggle feels like. And when they hear your story, they feel less alone in theirs, and that connection builds trust. Storytelling also paints pictures in the mind, and the mind thinks in images more than in abstract words. So when you use sensory detail, what something looked like, sounded like, felt like, you allow the listener to experience the story with you. And the more vividly they can see it, the more deeply they will carry it with them. But mastering storytelling is not only about telling your own stories, it is also about drawing out the stories of others, asking questions that invite people to share their experiences, listening deeply, and then highlighting those stories in ways that validate, encourage, and inspire, because people love to feel that their story matters. When you give them that gift, you create loyalty and respect. Some people resist storytelling because they think it makes communication less professional, but the truth is that every industry, every setting, every relationship is built on stories. Marketing is storytelling, leadership is storytelling, teaching is storytelling, even science is storytelling, because behind every discovery is a narrative of curiosity, failure, testing, and breakthrough, and the communicator who can frame their facts in story form will always be more impactful than the one who simply recites data. And just as important as telling stories is choosing them wisely, because not every story serves every audience, and part of speaking smart is tailoring the story to the listener, selecting examples they can relate to, experiences they can connect with, metaphors that resonate with their world, and this adaptability is what transforms a good storyteller into a master communicator. But beware of overcomplicating stories, because the most effective ones are simple and focused, carrying a single clear message rather than overwhelming the listener with too many details or tangents. And if you discipline yourself to keep your stories tight, purposeful, and emotionally alive, they will land with far greater force. Storytelling also has a rhythm and tone, and learning to pace your delivery, slowing down at key moments, pausing for effect, raising or lowering your voice to emphasize emotion, makes the story not just heard but felt, because in storytelling, silence is as powerful as words, and the pause between sentences often gives the listener time to feel the weight of what you've said. Ultimately, storytelling is about connection, about reminding people of the shared human journey, about bridging the gap between speaker and listener through the thread of emotion. And when you commit to using stories in your communication, you will notice that people not only listen more closely, but carry your message further, repeating it, sharing it, spreading it, because stories are contagious, and they ripple outward far beyond the original moment. So as you develop your skill of powerful communication, remember that you are not simply a conveyor of information. You are a storyteller. Your stories can inspire change, heal wounds, create unity, and spark action. And once you embrace this, you will discover that the most effective way to speak smart is not by trying to impress with knowledge, but by connecting with humanity through the timeless language of story. Persuasion is not about manipulation, trickery, or forcing people to do what they do not want to do. Persuasion at its highest level is about alignment, about understanding the needs, desires, fears, and values of another person and presenting your message in a way that resonates with what matters to them, because the truth is that people are rarely moved by raw logic alone. They are moved when logic is combined with emotion, when facts are wrapped in meaning, and when the message speaks to both their head and their heart. And if you want to master powerful communication, you must learn the psychology of persuasion, not to control others, but to influence them ethically, to guide them toward choices that serve both their interests and yours. Persuasion begins with credibility, because before people will listen to what you say, they must trust who you are, and credibility is built through consistency, honesty, and competence. So if your words are not backed by integrity, your attempts at persuasion will fall flat. But when people see that you walk your talk, that you keep your promises, that you bring value, your voice carries natural weight, and persuasion becomes easier. Next comes understanding your audience, because persuasion is not one size fits all, deeply personal, and the more you know about the person you are speaking to, their fears, goals, motivations, the more precisely you can frame your message, and this requires listening before speaking, asking questions, observing carefully, and paying attention to what is said and unsaid, because the more you understand, the more you can connect your message to their reality. Another core principle of persuasion is reciprocity, the idea that when you give freely, people feel an unconscious pull to give back. This is not about manipulation, but about generosity, because when you share value, whether that is time, attention, kindness, or resources, without demanding anything in return, people are naturally more open to your influence. This is why some of the most persuasive communicators are those who consistently show up in service of others. Persuasion also relies on social proof, because human beings are tribal creatures who often look to others for cues on what to believe or how to act. And when people see that an idea, product, or behavior is trusted by others they respect, they are more likely to accept it themselves, which is why testimonials, stories of success, or examples of common practice are powerful tools in persuasion. Scarcity is another principle, because people value what feels limited or exclusive. When something is abundant and easily available, it loses urgency. But when it is rare or fleeting, it becomes desirable, and while this principle can be abused, when used ethically, it highlights the importance of acting on opportunities before they disappear, which can motivate people to step forward when they might otherwise hesitate. Authority is also persuasive. People naturally defer to those who demonstrate expertise or leadership in a field. But true authority is not about titles or arrogance. It is about demonstrating knowledge in a way that educates and empowers others, so that your authority uplifts rather than intimidates. When you blend authority with humility, you become highly persuasive. Beyond these psychological triggers, persuasion also requires emotional resonance. No matter how rational your case, if people do not feel something, they will not move. And this means telling stories, painting visions, and connecting your message to values like freedom, security, love, growth, or belonging, because these are the deep drivers of human behavior. Persuasion also depends on clarity, because a confused mind does not take action, and if your message is too complex, people will nod politely but do nothing, your full attention, while if you strip it down to a clear and compelling call to action, you make it easy for them to take the next step, and the easier you make it, the more likely they are to do it. Another often overlooked element of persuasion is patience, because forcing a decision too quickly creates resistance, while giving people space to process, to feel ownership of the choice, creates lasting commitment. This is why the best persuaders are not pushy. They are guides who walk alongside until the other person is ready to move. And perhaps the most important truth about persuasion is that it must be authentic. Because if people sense that you are manipulating them for your own gain, they will resist even if your logic is flawless. But if they sense that you genuinely care about their outcome, they will open their hearts to your influence. This is why persuasion begins not with clever words, but with genuine intention. So to speak smart in the realm of persuasion, focus on building credibility, listening deeply, connecting your message to values, using psychological principles ethically, appealing to both logic and emotion, and always aligning your influence with mutual benefit. Because when persuasion is practiced with integrity, ceases to be manipulation and becomes leadership, it ceases to be pressure and becomes inspiration, transforms communication from a transaction into a transformation. Authenticity is the foundation of lasting influence, because, while you can learn techniques, polish your delivery, and study the psychology of communication, none of it will matter if people sense that you are being fake, insincere, or manipulative, because human beings have an almost instinctive ability to detect when someone is not being real, and the moment they sense it, trust is broken. And without trust, no amount of clever words can hold influence. But when you speak with authenticity, when your words align with your values, when your tone matches your intention, when your presence reflects your true self, people lean in, they listen, they remember, and they believe. Because authenticity is magnetic, it draws people not through force but through resonance. This is why some of the most compelling communicators are not the slickest, smoothest, or most polished, but those who are unafraid to be themselves, flaws and all. To understand authenticity, you must first understand alignment, because authenticity is not about blurting out every thought or oversharing every detail of your private life. It is about alignment between what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do, and when those four elements line up, your communication gains a natural integrity that cannot be faked. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect you because they know you are real. Authenticity also requires self-awareness, because if you do not know who you are, what you value, or what you stand for, it is impossible to communicate authentically, and this is why the journey toward authentic communication begins with reflection, asking yourself what matters most to you, what values you refuse to compromise, what truths you are willing to stand by even when it costs you. Because the clearer you are about your inner compass, clearer and more powerful your outer communication becomes. Authentic communication also means embracing vulnerability, because many people hide behind masks of perfection, thinking that showing weakness will make them lose respect. But in reality, perfection creates distance, while vulnerability creates connection, and when you are willing to admit mistakes, to share lessons learned from failure, to acknowledge uncertainty, invite others to see your humanity, and humanity is what people connect with most deeply. But vulnerability does not mean recklessness, means being wise about what you share, choosing to reveal the parts of your story that create connection and growth, rather than simply unloading emotions without purpose. This balance of honesty with intention is what gives vulnerability its power. Authenticity also requires courage, because in a world that constantly pressures you to fit in, to conform, to present a carefully curated image, being real often feels risky. Yet, the paradox is that the more real you are, the more powerful your influence becomes, because people are starving for truth in a world full of masks. And when you give them truth, they cannot help but respect it. Consider the difference between a leader who hides behind jargon and corporate language versus one who speaks plainly about the challenges ahead, who admits their fears but also expresses their hope, who does not pretend to have all the answers but commits to finding them together. Which one do people follow with more loyalty? Always the authentic one, because authenticity breeds trust, and trust is the currency of influence. Authenticity also transforms relationships, because when you communicate with sincerity, you give others permission to do the same, and this creates deeper, more meaningful connections, whether in friendship, family, or professional life, because authenticity encourages authenticity, and when two people are real with each other, barriers fall, conflicts resolve more easily, and bonds strengthen. Another dimension of authenticity is consistency, because people will test your words against your actions, and if your words do not match your behavior, no matter how eloquent you are, you will lose credibility. But if you consistently live what you speak, your authenticity deepens with every interaction, and people begin to see you not just as a communicator, but as a person of integrity. This consistency extends beyond big decisions into everyday interactions. The way you treat someone when nobody is watching, the way you speak to those who cannot benefit you, you respond under stress. And all of these small moments either strengthen or weaken your authenticity, because authenticity is not a performance, it is a lifestyle. And here is the great truth: authenticity is not about trying to be authentic, because the very act of trying often leads to faking. It is about removing the layers of pretense, fear, and performance that cover who you already are, because beneath all of that, your true voice is waiting, and when you allow it to emerge, communication becomes effortless, because you are no longer acting, you are simply being. Being is always more powerful than pretending. Authenticity also influences the way you listen, because when you are real, you do not listen to manipulate or to gather ammunition for your response. You listen to understand, and that sincerity changes the way others experience your presence, making them feel valued and respected. Finally, authenticity is not only about the individual, but also about the collective, because in teams, communities, and organizations, cultures of authenticity are those where communication flows freely, where people feel safe to speak their truth without fear, and these cultures are the most innovative, resilient, and united, because authenticity creates trust, and trust creates possibility. So if you want to speak smart, if you want to master the psychology of powerful communication, do not chase perfection, do not chase performance, chase truth, chase alignment, chase the courage to let your real self shine through your words, because when you do, you will discover that authenticity does what no technique can do. It makes your communication timeless, because long after people forget your exact words, they will remember your sincerity, your honesty, your realness, and they will carry that memory with them, because authenticity is the language of the heart, and when you speak it, you never have to force influence, you simply become influential. Confidence in communication is not about arrogance, domination, or pretending to know everything, but about embodying a steady belief in yourself and your message, a belief that radiates through your words, your voice, your posture, and your presence. Because when you lack confidence, even the most brilliant ideas fall flat, but when you speak with confidence, even a simple message carries weight, and people instinctively pay attention, because confidence reassures them that you know where you are going, and that it is safe to follow your lead. Yet confidence is one of the most misunderstood aspects of communication, because many mistake it for volume, aggressiveness, or showmanship. In truth, real confidence is quiet strength, calm clarity, and deep authenticity. The ability to be fully yourself in any situation without shrinking or inflating. And to arrive at this level of confidence, you must first confront the inner voice of self-doubt, that critical whisper that questions whether you are good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to speak. Because confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite fear, to trust that your preparation, your perspective, your presence matter. Confidence begins in the mind long before it shows up in speech. The way you talk to yourself internally shapes the way you communicate externally. And if your self-talk is full of criticism, comparison, and negativity, your communication will always carry a hidden tremor of insecurity. But if your self-talk is filled with encouragement, empowerment, belief, your communication will naturally project strength. And this is why mastering positive self-talk is not just about personal happiness, it's about communicative power. Confidence also grows from preparation, because nothing creates insecurity like being unprepared, and nothing fuels confidence like mastery of your material. So the more you rehearse, research, and refine your message, the freer you are to focus on connection rather than fear. Because you are not scrambling for words, you are simply expressing what you already know. Beyond preparation, confidence is also physical, because your body communicates before your words do. And if your posture is collapsed, your eyes dart nervously, your shoulders are tense, people will sense insecurity no matter what you say. But if you stand tall, breathe deeply, maintain calm eye contact, and use open gestures, you broadcast confidence without saying a word, and the brain, both yours and your audience's, responds to this nonverbal signal by reinforcing belief. Confidence also comes from embracing imperfection, because many people believe they must deliver perfectly to be respected, but perfectionism is a trap that kills confidence, while acceptance of mistakes creates freedom, because when you know you can handle slip-ups, when you trust your ability to recover, you stop fearing failure, and fearlessness is the heart of confidence. Real confidence also balances humility, because arrogance pushes people away, while confidence draws them near. The difference lies in focus. Arrogance focuses on self, while confidence focuses on message and audience. Arrogance shouts to be seen, while confidence speaks to be heard. Arrogance exaggerates to impress, while confidence tells the truth with clarity. People instinctively know the difference, which is why they resist arrogance, but follow confidence. Another aspect of confidence is resilience, because confident communicators are not those who never feel nervous, but those who bounce back quickly from nervousness, reframe adrenaline as energy rather than danger, who interpret the racing heart and sweaty palms not as signs of weakness, but as the body's way of gearing up for performance. This reframing turns fear into fuel. Confidence also grows through experience, because the more you put yourself in situations where you must speak, the more you discover that you can handle them, and each small victory builds momentum, until what once terrified you becomes familiar, and even enjoyable. This is why avoiding communication challenges keeps you trapped in insecurity, while stepping into them, even awkwardly, grows confidence over time. Confidence is also relational, because when you truly care about the people you are communicating with, focus shifts from "how do I look" to "how can I serve?" And that outward focus quiets the inner critic, freeing you to connect genuinely, because people respond not to your perfection but to your presence. Confidence also requires alignment with values, because if you are speaking something you do not believe in, no amount of technique will make you convincing. But when you stand for something you deeply believe, confidence rises naturally, because your words are charged with conviction. Conviction is the purest form of confidence. Finally, confidence is a practice, not a destination. Even the most seasoned communicators still feel nerves, still doubt themselves, still face moments of insecurity. They have learned to act confidently anyway, to breathe, to ground, to speak, and to trust that their words matter, and each time they do, they reinforce the habit of confidence until it becomes second nature. So if you want to master powerful communication, do not chase arrogance or perfection. True confidence, feed your mind with positive self-talk, prepare thoroughly, carry your body with presence, accept imperfection, practice consistently, focus outward, and speak from conviction, because when you do, your words will carry a strength that needs no shouting, a presence that requires no performance, and an authenticity that inspires trust. And that is the kind of confidence that not only makes you a better communicator, but also transforms the way people experience you, because they will not just hear your words. They will feel your certainty, and in feeling it, they will begin to believe in themselves too. Emotional intelligence is one of the most transformative skills you can develop if you want to master communication, because while intellect may allow you to craft arguments, and logic may give structure to your ideas, it is emotional intelligence that gives your words life and resonance, since people are not machines processing data. They are human beings shaped by feelings, moods, memories, and subconscious triggers. If you fail to understand emotions, both your own and those of others, you will always fall short of your communicative potential. When you learn to read emotions, regulate your own responses, empathize with others, and channel emotional energy into connection rather than conflict, you unlock a level of influence that no formula or technique alone can provide. Emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, the ability to notice your own emotions as they rise, to name them, and to recognize how they affect your behavior and communication, because without awareness, you are at the mercy of your feelings, lashing out when angry, shutting down when anxious, exaggerating when excited. These unregulated reactions can sabotage your credibility. But when you are aware, you create space between stimulus and response. You can pause, breathe, choose how to communicate, and that choice is where power lies. Self-regulation is the second pillar. Awareness alone is not enough. You must be able to manage your emotional impulses, to stay calm under pressure, to resist the temptation to say the first sharp word that comes to mind, and to maintain composure, even when conversations grow heated, because people trust those who stay grounded in storms. And when you show that steadiness, others will naturally follow your lead. Emotional intelligence is not only about yourself. It is also about empathy, the ability to step into someone else's perspective, to imagine how they are feeling, to sense the emotions behind their words, and to respond in a way that shows understanding. Empathy dissolves defensiveness, builds trust, and opens hearts faster than any argument ever could, and when people feel understood, more open to your influence. Empathy, however, is not about agreement. It is about acknowledgement, about saying, I hear you, I see you, your feelings make sense. And in that acknowledgement, people find validation that calms their nervous system and allows them to re-engage with reason. This is why emotionally intelligent communicators are so effective in conflict. They diffuse tension, not by overpowering, but by understanding. Emotional intelligence also involves social awareness, the ability to read the room, to pick up on unspoken cues, to sense when energy shifts, to notice the glance, the silence, the body language that says more than words, because communication is never just verbal. It is always layered with emotions and signals beneath the surface, and those who miss these cues often blunder without realizing it, while those who notice can adjust in real time to keep connection alive. Beyond awareness and empathy, emotional intelligence culminates in relationship management, the skill of using your emotional insight to guide interactions toward positive outcomes, to inspire, to resolve conflict, to motivate, and to unite. And this is where emotional intelligence becomes leadership, because the ability to influence emotions is the ability to move people, and the ability to move people is the essence of powerful communication. Think about a great speaker who moves an audience to tears, laughter, or action. They are not just delivering content, they are orchestrating emotion, using tone, rhythm, storytelling, and presence to guide the emotional journey, and the audience leaves not just informed but transformed. And that transformation is only possible through emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not just for grand speeches. It matters in everyday conversations, in family disputes, in workplace collaboration, in customer service, in friendship, in parenting. Because in every interaction, emotions shape perception, and perception shapes response. If you can master that invisible layer, you gain a quiet but profound power. Developing emotional intelligence takes practice, because it requires slowing down in a world that pushes you to react fast. It requires curiosity about feelings that many prefer to avoid. It requires humility to accept that logic is not always king, and it requires vulnerability to engage with your own emotions honestly. But the rewards are immense, because emotional intelligence not only makes you a better communicator, it makes you a better human, more patient, more compassionate, more resilient. One of the greatest applications of emotional intelligence in communication is in persuasion. People rarely make decisions based solely on data. They decide based on how they feel about the data. And when you speak to both their logic and their emotions, you create lasting impact, because emotions are the glue that make information stick. Another application is in conflict resolution, because without emotional intelligence, conflicts escalate as each person digs deeper into defensiveness. But with emotional intelligence, you can shift the conversation from attack to understanding, from battle to bridge. That shift is what makes peace possible. Emotional intelligence also enhances authenticity, because when you are in touch with your own emotions, are less likely to hide behind masks or fake personas, and people sense that openness and respond with openness of their own, creating deeper, richer communication. Finally, emotional intelligence is the skill that allows you to connect across differences, cultural, generational, ideological, because while words and beliefs may divide, emotions are universal, and when you speak to the human heart, you transcend barriers. So, if you want to speak smart, if you want to master the psychology of powerful communication, Not only polish your vocabulary or memorize techniques. Cultivate emotional intelligence, practice awareness, regulate your reactions, empathize deeply, read the room, and guide relationships with care. Because when you do, your words will no longer be just words, they will become experiences, carrying not only meaning, but also feeling, and it is that feeling that people remember, that moves them, and that binds them to you, because in the end, people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel, and emotional intelligence ensures that how you make them feel is exactly what opens the door to understanding, trust, and transformation. Storytelling is the heartbeat of powerful communication, because while facts inform, it is stories that inspire. While data persuades the mind, it is stories that touch the heart. And if you want your message to last beyond the moment it is spoken, you must learn the art of storytelling, because human beings are wired for narrative. We have passed down knowledge, culture, and values through stories for thousands of years, and even in the age of technology and information overload, it is still stories that cut through the noise in memory and move people to action. A story is not just entertainment, it is a bridge that carries emotion. It is a container that gives meaning to facts. It is a mirror where people see themselves, and that mirror creates identification. Because when people recognize themselves in your story, they trust you more, they follow you further, and they carry your message deeper into their own lives. Storytelling works because it engages both logic and emotion simultaneously, because a well-told story has structure that satisfies the brain's desire for order, beginning, middle, and end. But it also sparks images, feelings, and imagination that the brain treats as lived experience, and this is why people can recall stories years later with vivid detail while forgetting statistics they heard yesterday. To become a smart speaker, must learn to weave stories into your communication. Not long, rambling tales, but purposeful stories that illuminate your point, stories that embody your values, stories that move the listener closer to understanding, and the best stories are simple, specific, and human. Storytelling begins with vulnerability, because to tell a story is to reveal something of yourself, to share a memory, a struggle, a mistake, or a triumph, and in doing so you invite others to lower their guard and connect with your humanity. This is why stories of failure are often more powerful than stories of success, because they show resilience, growth, and authenticity. People resonate not with perfection, but with imperfection made meaningful. Great storytelling also requires structure, a setup that introduces the context, a conflict that creates tension, a resolution that delivers transformation, and a takeaway that connects the story back to your audience's life. And when these elements flow together, your story becomes not just a personal anecdote but a universal lesson. Another key to storytelling is detail, because vague stories fade while specific details ignite imagination. The color of the room, the expression on a face, the sound of the silence, all these sensory cues pull listeners into the moment as if they were there. And when they feel like they were there, they experience the emotions you felt, and those emotions stay with them long after the story ends. But storytelling is not only about personal tales, it is also about metaphors, parables, examples from history, or case studies from real life. Stories can come from anywhere, and the communicator's gift is to select and shape them, so they illustrate truth in a way that logic alone cannot. Storytelling also requires pacing, the rhythm of your words, the pauses at key moments, the rise of your voice in tension, the softening in resolution, because delivery shapes experience, and an average story told well can move people more than a great story told poorly. Another dimension of storytelling is relatability, because your story must connect to your audience's world. It must resonate with their values, struggles, and dreams, otherwise it becomes entertainment without impact. So the art is to tell your story, but make it about them, to reveal your life while holding up a mirror to theirs, and when they see themselves in your words, they are transformed. Storytelling also taps into archetypes, those timeless patterns of human experience. The hero's journey, the underdog's struggle, the mentor's wisdom, triumph over adversity, and when your story fits into these universal patterns, it resonates across cultures. These archetypes live in the collective human psyche, and hearing them awakens something deep in us all. But to master storytelling, you must also master listening, because the best stories come not only from your life but from others' lives, from the people around you, from the shared struggles of your community. And when you gather and retell these stories with respect, you create collective wisdom that binds people together. Storytelling also builds leadership, because leaders who only issue instructions create compliance, but leaders who tell stories create vision, and vision inspires commitment far beyond compliance. Because it is one thing to tell people what to do, and another to show them through story why it matters, how it connects to a bigger picture, and why they should care. Another gift of storytelling is memory, because when you attach a principle or lesson to a story, people remember it without effort. This is why the most enduring teachers, from ancient philosophers to modern communicators, always teach through story, bedding truth in narrative so that it is carried forward across generations. Yet storytelling is not only about words. It is also about energy, because the emotion you bring to a story determines the emotion your audience feels. And if you tell a story flatly, it will fall flat. But if you relive the story as you tell it, if you allow the emotions to rise again, your audience will feel them too. This shared emotional journey is what makes communication unforgettable. Storytelling also requires courage, because not every story will be comfortable. Not every truth will be easy to share, but it is often the hardest stories that hold the greatest power, the moments of pain that reveal resilience, the moments of failure that reveal strength, the moments of loss that reveal love. And when you dare to tell these stories, you give others permission to face their own, and that is the deepest gift of all. So if you want to speak smart, if you want to master the psychology of powerful communication, learn to tell stories. Short stories, long stories, funny stories, serious stories, stories of your own, stories of others. But above all, stories with purpose, because when you do, your words will not just inform, they will transform. They will not just be heard, they will be remembered. They will not just pass through ears, they will live in hearts. And that is the essence of storytelling, the ability to take a simple moment and turn it into meaning, to take a single voice and turn it into a chorus, to take communication and turn it into connection that lasts beyond time. Chapter 14. Clarity is the oxygen of communication, because no matter how passionate your delivery, how intelligent your ideas, or how strong your intentions, if your message is foggy, cluttered, or confusing, people will not absorb it, they will not act on it, and they will not remember it. And this is why some of the smartest minds in history are remembered not for the complexity of their thoughts, but for their ability to express those thoughts simply, directly, and memorably, because clarity makes knowledge accessible and wisdom actionable. To speak with clarity is to strip away the unnecessary, to reduce noise so that signal can shine, to ensure that your listener knows exactly what you mean without having to fight through jargon, ambiguity, or endless tangents. And clarity is not a gift you are born with, but a skill you must practice, because it requires the discipline to think deeply, the humility to simplify, and the empathy to see through the ears of your listener rather than the mind of the expert inside you. Clarity begins in thought, because if your thinking is muddled, your speech will be muddled, and this is why preparation matters, taking the time to outline your key points. Decide the single most important message you want your audience to walk away with, to cut the extra and highlight the essence. Clarity is not about saying less. It is about saying what matters most. A clear communicator knows that less is more, not because they fear complexity, but because they know simplicity is power, and every extra word, every extra detour steals energy from the core message. So clarity is the art of ruthless focus. But clarity is not only about words. It is also about structure, because the human brain craves order, and if your communication is scattered, your audience feels lost. But if your ideas follow a logical path, introduction, development, resolution, the brain relaxes, opens and retains, so structure is clarity's skeleton. Clarity also requires language that is precise yet relatable, because big words may impress, but they rarely connect. And while there is a place for technical terms in technical settings, in most communication, the clearer you can be, the stronger your impact, and clarity favors vivid imagery over abstract jargon, because when people can see what you mean, they understand faster and remember longer. Another secret of clarity is repetition. Not mindless redundancy, but intentional reinforcement, because people rarely grasp the full meaning the first time they hear something, so you must repeat key ideas in different ways, through examples, stories and metaphors, until the message sinks deep. This is why great communicators often sound simple yet profound, because they understand that clarity is not about dazzling complexity, but about unforgettable simplicity. Clarity also requires listening, because you cannot be clear unless you know what your audience needs, what they already understand, what confuses them, and what matters to them. So the path to clarity often begins with asking questions and paying attention, then tailoring your words to bridge their world to yours. Another dimension of clarity is brevity. Not the brevity of rushing, but the brevity of precision, the ability to cut filler and speak directly. Every ramble, every detour dilutes clarity, while every focused phrase strengthens it. This is why clarity is as much about what you remove as what you add. Clarity also depends on delivery. Even the clearest ideas can be muddied by a rushed pace, monotone voice, or scattered energy, but when you pause, emphasize, and pace your words with intention, clarity emerges naturally, because people need time not only to hear, but also to process, and silence can sometimes clarify more than sound. Clarity also requires courage, because many hide behind complexity to avoid vulnerability, to make themselves seem smarter or to mask their uncertainty. But the clearest communicators dare to be simple, to risk being fully understood. Clarity reveals you, and that revelation feels risky but builds trust. Another key to clarity is visualization. Give them your full attention, because when you can picture your idea clearly, you can explain it clearly. But when your own vision is fuzzy, your words will be too. So clarity is as much an inner process as an outer one, demanding that you refine your thinking before you share it. Clarity is also a form of respect. When you speak clearly, you respect your listener's time, attention, and energy. But when you bury them in confusion, waste those precious resources, and nothing erodes trust faster than communication that feels like a maze. Clarity is equally crucial in writing, where the reader cannot interrupt to ask for clarification, which is why great writers spend more time editing than drafting, cutting clutter, sharpening sentences, and polishing until the message gleams. And this practice of writing clarity strengthens spoken clarity as well. In leadership, clarity is power, because unclear directions create frustration, wasted effort, and fractured teams, but clear vision unites, motivates, and guides. And history is filled with leaders remembered not for complicated strategies but for clear calls to action that rallied people behind a cause. In relationships, clarity prevents misunderstanding, because vague statements breed assumption. Assumption breeds misinterpretation. Misinterpretation breeds conflict, while clear words, spoken with honesty and kindness, prevent small issues from becoming big ones. Clarity is also a discipline of presence, because when you are distracted, rushed, or unsure, your communication loses sharpness. When you are fully present, thinking as you speak and speaking as you think, clarity flows, because presence brings precision. The practice of clarity is lifelong, because as your ideas grow more complex, the temptation to overcomplicate grows with them, and the discipline to simplify must always be renewed. But those who commit to clarity find that their influence expands, because people gravitate toward those who make the world simpler rather than harder to understand. Ultimately, clarity is not just about communication. It is about thinking. It is about living with focus. It is about cutting through the noise of distraction to find the signal of truth. And when you live with clarity, you speak with clarity. When you speak with clarity, you empower others to see more clearly too. So if you want to speak smart, you want to master the psychology of powerful communication, commit yourself to clarity, prepare deeply, structure wisely, simplify ruthlessly, deliver calmly, and respect your audience's need for precision, because when you do, your words will not just be heard, they will be understood. They will not just be processed, they will be remembered. And they will not just pass through minds, they will shape lives, because clarity is the light that turns communication from noise into meaning, from confusion into connection, sound into significance. The ultimate power of communication lies not in the elegance of words, the brilliance of arguments, or the charm of delivery, but in the transformation it creates in others and in yourself. Because at its core, communication is not just about speaking or persuading. It is about connection, and connection is the bridge across which influence, trust, growth, and change flow. And when you master this truth, you no longer see communication as a performance but as a service, a responsibility, and a gift, because every conversation has the potential to plant a seed that can alter the direction of a life. Every word you speak carries energy that either builds or breaks, heals or harms, inspires or discourages. By now, after exploring blame, responsibility, listening, empathy, clarity, and all the other dimensions of communication, the pattern is clear. Powerful communication begins with the mind, with the stories we tell ourselves, the emotions we regulate, the perspectives we adopt, and only then flows outward through tone, gesture, and language, which means that communication mastery is self-mastery, because you cannot give what you do not have. And if your inner dialogue is chaotic, negative, or confused, your outer communication will echo that chaos. But if your inner dialogue is grounded, positive, and focused, your words will naturally reflect wisdom and stability. The final step, then, Embrace communication not as a tool you pull out only in special situations, but as a daily practice, a lifestyle, a constant act of aligning your mind, your words, and your actions so that they harmonize into authenticity, because authenticity is the highest level of communication, the place where people no longer sense performance but presence, no longer sense manipulation but sincerity, no longer sense noise but resonance. To be authentic does not mean to say everything that passes through your mind, but to align what you say with what you truly believe, to let your values, your intentions, and your words form a straight line, because when they do, people may not always agree with you, but they will always trust you. Trust is the soil in which influence grows. Communication at this level requires courage, because authenticity is vulnerable. It opens you to judgment, but paradoxically, it is that very vulnerability that gives your words weight. Give them your full attention, because people resonate more deeply with imperfection that is honest than with perfection that is false, and when they see your humanity, are willing to join you in growth. The ultimate communicator, therefore, is not the one who dazzles, but the one who empowers, not the one who dominates conversation, but the one who creates space for others to find their voice, not the one who always has the last word, but the one who sparks dialogue that continues long after they have left the room. Imagine the ripple effect. When you speak authentically and with clarity, when you listen deeply and respond with empathy, when you balance confidence with humility and influence with service, the people you touch feel not only heard but elevated. They in turn communicate more positively with others, spreading a cycle of understanding, connection, and trust that extends far beyond what you can see. This is how communication changes not only relationships but entire communities and cultures. Think of great leaders, mentors, and teachers who left a lasting imprint. Not because they were flawless speakers, but because their communication carried integrity, because their words matched their actions, because their presence made others feel capable, your full attention, and because their vision was communicated so clearly and sincerely that others made it their own. And this is the final lesson. Communication is not about you, it is about us. It is about what we create together. It is about turning monologues into dialogues, speeches into conversations, and conversations into movements. To live this lesson, you must practice constantly. Reflect daily on how you speak to others and to yourself. Ask for feedback not only on what you say, but on how you make people feel. Read widely to sharpen your mind. Listen generously to stretch your empathy. Step boldly into moments of discomfort where authentic conversations can heal, because it is in those uncomfortable, honest, courageous conversations that growth happens, that trust is built, that lives are changed. Never underestimate the power of silence, either. Silence is also communication, and when used with intention, it creates space for others to reflect, to share, to process, and sometimes the most powerful communication is not what you say, but what you hold back. The moment when you resist the urge to fill the air and instead allow truth to surface on its own. Finally, recognize that communication is never finished. It evolves with every experience, every mistake, every success, and every new person you encounter. And to master it is not to arrive at perfection, but to commit to progress, to keep learning, keep refining, keep growing. Because the moment you believe you have mastered communication is the moment you stop listening, and the moment you stop listening is the moment your power begins to fade. So carry this truth with you. If it is always someone else's fault, you are not growing. If you do not take responsibility for your words, you are not leading. If you do not listen, you are not connecting. You do not empathize, you are not influencing. If you do not clarify, you are not empowering. And if you do not speak with authenticity, you are not truly communicating. Let this book, this journey, be not just a set of techniques, but a call to transformation, a reminder that communication is not about being impressive, but about being impactful, not about winning arguments, but about winning hearts, not about proving you are smart, but about speaking smart in a way that uplifts others. Because in the end, your legacy will not be the words you spoke, but the lives you touched through them. And when your words align with wisdom, empathy, clarity, and authenticity, they will echo long after the sound has faded, living on in the thoughts, choices, and growth of those who heard you. That is the highest form of communication, the ultimate mastery, and the true psychology of powerful connection.